Welcome back, everyone, to another episode for the fans. Sorry about the really long delay. So, the thing that I used to kind of adjust mine and McKay's audio, for whatever reason, it picks up mine so I can adjust how loud I am. That way I'm not getting too loud, I'm not getting too quiet. But for whatever reason, when McKay talks, it was showing as nothing. And that's kind of how I used to test to see if he's able to be heard, because we've had issues in the past where, he won't be heard for the first, minute or so for whatever dumb reason. And it wasn't showing up at all for me, so I figured he wasn't being heard. But we had Duckmaster come in, and thank you, Duckmaster. Really appreciate you. Helped me out a lot. And he was able to verify that everything's working, and for whatever reason, it's just being bugged on my end. So, without further ado, welcome back. Glad to have everybody here. McKay, get started while I let everybody know we're back and everything's good to go.
I don't know what it is, man. I feel like I'm like the super naughty, irresponsible, not well behaved child, and my microphone is always having issues. I'm that kid in the family, and Duckmaster always has to be the one to come in there and be like, no, it's not working.
The crazy thing is, I don't think it was your mic this time. Normally we're like, oh, it's probably your mic. No, this time it wasn't your mic. This time it was just a weird bug or glitch that is going on with this stream lab, and I don't know. I'm gonna have to dial down and figure this out one day.
I blame COVID-19.
Yeah, the virus. So the funny thing is, the virus pushed apparently everything to update. Like, my iPhone's updating, Twitch itself updated today, Facebook updated today. I'm just like, everything decided to update, and now I can't get half the things to work the way I wanted it to.
It's true. My Chromebook updated today too, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
Oh. Anyways, welcome everyone.
Oh man.
To this little bit of a mess. We're gonna have to breeze through a lot of this that we wanted to talk about just because we're falling a little bit behind. So, starting with a little bit of news. First things first. The cover of Madden 2021 is going to be Lamar Jackson, which I personally think that he very much deserved it.
I mean, when you're the MVP last year and you break as many records as you do in your sophomore season, of course you deserve it. Let's just hope that this whole, the whole Madden curse thing doesn't really come back to haunt him this season.
And I mean, he did say that he was not afraid of any curse, and I really hope that doesn't bite him in the butt.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Anyways, but that moves us to our next bit of news with Cam Newton being open to being a backup with the right team, which I find very interesting because you think of Cam Newton, he was one of the bigger name quarterbacks a couple years back, and to think, yeah, he's a former MVP, and it's weird to think it's like, oh, now he's open to being a backup.
It's interesting to see this with him, but I think he also understands that some of these teams may think that he's damaged goods with this amount of surgeries and injuries that he's been having over the past few seasons with teams with the Carolina Panthers. Okay, apparently now I'm having problems with my head. The computers are, jeez. If he is with the right team, which again I still think it could be the Los Angeles Chargers. After Justin Herbert, but
what I find very interesting is, do you think that we'll see Cam Newton with the team at the start of this 2020 season?
Not at the start of the 2020 season. Unless, of course, evaluate my point or restate it. Unless he's with a team like the Los Angeles Chargers, where maybe they do want to keep Tyrod Taylor in a backup role. Maybe they do want to continue to groom Justin Herbert for that spot. You'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, I was even thinking, it's like, as we know, a lot of things start to cancel with trades and everything about halfway through the season, a little bit, maybe a third of the way through the season is probably a better way to say it.
Yeah.
With that being said, what would you think if, let's say Baker Mayfield with the Browns is underperforming? Do you think they might bring in Cam Newton to take over that starting role or to come in for him?
I don't think they'll bring him in. I think if Baker Mayfield does continue to underperform, they'll have Case Keenum step up to the plate.
Is he back with the Browns again?
Yes, yeah, I would say because Case Keenum did sign with them a little while ago. I know that's something we kind of brought up when it came to our free agency episode.
Yeah, it just blew me away because he was an original Browns quarterback, and then he went all over the place. He went to Jacksonville for a bit, and weird that he's back.
Was part of the Minneapolis Miracle with the Vikings. And he was with Denver too for a while. I mean, he's a journeyman, but I think he would be picked before Cam Newton. I think Cam Newton's best bet is with some sort of team that it's not really clear on who the quarterback could be or if a quarterback is underperforming. Another place that I think Cam Newton could do well is Denver.
Oh, with the Broncos with Drew Luck. Sorry, I keep thinking of Andrew Luck every time I think of him. It's bad.
Yes, if Drew Luck, I almost said Andrew Luck too. If Drew Luck doesn't perform the way he's supposed to, which I don't know.
I feel like he would be better off going to the New York Giants to replace Daniel Jones than Drew Luck.
I would agree with that. I'm just saying more for Denver. Denver would be a good place for him to go, but I also know he doesn't really necessarily fit John Elway's definition of a quarterback. And also, I mean, this is another thing too. I just don't know how well Drew Lock is going to do this season. Excuse me if I don't have the highest expectations for him. I kind of see him as more of a Blake Bortles or a Mitchell Trubisky right now. So let's don't know.
You mean they're good for maybe one season and then they're done?
Yeah, but that's kind of how the way it's been for Broncos quarterbacks over the last little while. So
that's true. But
it's hard to say.
Yep, but with that, our last bit of news is that Roger Goodell is open to adjusting the schedule due to COVID-19.
This is no surprise. I think that's just something we need to clarify in there, that I think they're still going to try and get the season up and running, possibly even without fans in the stadium. We'll just have to see how things go. However, Shane, I do want to point something out, though, that I think would be very interesting to see if these games took place without fans in the arena. And you want to hear what that is?
I do want to hear, because this is interesting.
This is going to be really funny. My brother-in-law and I were talking about this, but we were talking about it in the case of the NBA. If they hold games without fans in there, you have these microphones that are still in there, still on, in this case, the football field or on the basketball court, in order to hear all the action. Generally it doesn't matter, how loud the fans are. We're still going to hear the quarterback, call out and, have the ball snapped. It's going to be really interesting to see what these TV networks do with the amount of swearing that goes on the field. And now it goes up.
See, I thought you were going to go on a different route where teams that is definitely like a different momentum and different feeling when playing at their home turf with the fans. For example, the Seattle Seahawks, known to have one of the loudest stadiums due to their fans. Imagine how silent it would be and how much more confident, like, other teams who may not be as well, like, let's just say, like the Cincinnati Bengals of last year, if they would have done better without being booed or having, like, everybody in that stadium rooting against them. It's literally just going to be them against one other team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see if that ends up happening. But kind of moving on, one more bit of news we also should go on there that we forgot to mention, though, is also Andy Dalton. Obviously, he's not with the Bengals anymore. He's now a Dallas Cowboy. Truth be told, I find that really interesting because
Dak.
Dak Prescott. It's the guy still hasn't even gotten paid, and now all of a sudden, boom, there's Andy Dalton. And we're gonna get into this, Shane, tonight about, do you think that's gonna help or hurt the Cowboys, this situation with bringing Dalton in, and really how the Cowboys are going to perform this season. We're gonna be talking about this in our episode tonight, aren't we?
Yeah, we gotta hurry through this a little bit, a lot through ourselves. So as many of you may or may not know, our episode tonight is about the new schedule that was released last week, with when each team is playing which team and kind of giving the full details on the NFL schedule. Everything is in kind of a soft schedule of when the games are actually going to happen, but we have of when teams are going to play each other, of who's playing who, and everything like that. So we want to go over that and kind of give a lowdown of our predictions for how each team is going to do.
Definitely. So going over the schedule first with each division, I'm going to name off the different divisions that they'll be playing, some of the teams that they'll be playing, and then Shane and I will get into our predictions based off of some of these teams' competitors. So starting off, as we always do, we start off with the AFC East. They're going to be going up against the AFC West and the Nfc West, which is going to be really interesting for them. Really tough, if you ask me. They'll also be playing select teams, depending on their placing from last season, in the AFC North and AFC South. Shane, if you want to take the next one, by all means.
Yeah, definitely. Next one, we have AFC North. They're going to be playing the AFC South and the NFC East, with teams from the AFC East and West kind of accordingly based off of how they performed.
The AFC West, we have them playing the AFC East, as mentioned earlier. They'll also be playing the NFC South, along with select teams from the AFC North and the AFC South.
Next, we have the AFC South, where they will be playing the AFC North and the NFC North, with teams from the AFC East and West.
Moving on to the NFC East, hopefully everyone can kind of keep this in mind. If you're not, I'm sorry, this might be really confusing, but it'll all make sense if you actually look at your team schedule. But for the NFC East, they'll be playing the AFC North and the NFC West teams, as well as certain teams from the NFC North and NFC South.
All right, and we just finished. Sorry, I zoned out for a moment. Was checking on something.
We're on the NFC North now.
Okay, wanted to make sure. NFC North will be playing, like we said earlier, the AFC South and the NFC South, with teams from the NFC East and West accordingly.
And the NFC West plays the AFC East and the NFC East, and then certain teams from the NFC South and the NFC North. And then last but not least,
we have the NFC South facing the AFC West and NFC North, with teams for the NFC East and West.
Basically, the long story short of it is, for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with how scheduling works, you're always going to end up one division from your from your conference, as well as one division from another conference. And then generally, if you play in one of the North or South divisions, you'll play a certain team from the East or West divisions. And it kind of corresponds with each and every single division in both conferences, so that you get a fairly rounded, accurate different sort of teams on your schedule that you'll be able to play. So when we talked about how there'll be certain teams from certain divisions that you would play based on your performance, the best way that we could describe that as is let's take the New York Giants, for example. In the NFC East, they placed third overall in their division. The Eagles took first, the Cowboys took second, and Washington Redskins took fourth. So that would mean, in this case, the NFC East playing the NFC North and NFC South with select teams. That would mean that they would play the third-ranked team from last season in the NFC North, which was the Chicago Bears, and the third-ranked team in the NFC South, which was, if I remember correctly, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yep. But that's pretty much how the schedule is going to work, and I'm going to slowly go through like week 1 through 17 as we talk about our predictions for each team. It's too much work to go through all 32 teams and show each person's schedule, but we'll get a week. So like every 2 teams, I'll go down to the next week for everybody so they can see their schedules.
And Shane and I will be hashing out, what of our sort of our preseason predictions are based on how we think these teams are going to perform with their schedule. And from what I'm looking at, in most cases, Shane and I do not agree, which will bring up some part of discussion. Nothing, for everyone who watched this before, that Shane and I don't argue. We don't get into heated debates or anything like that.
Unless it's about how the Bears suck.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry. I had to get you back for the Jaguar comment in the audio test.
I want to go. I'm just
Anyway, sorry. We both know the Jaguars are worse.
Okay, all right. We'll get there. Start off. Let's go off with a team that's really going to be going through some big changes this year. Obviously, they've lost, their dynamic quarterback that they've had for several years now. The New England Patriots are going to be the first team that we're talking about with our predictions. Now, keep in mind earlier, we said that the AFC East has to play the AFC West, which includes the defending Super Bowl champions in the Kansas City Chiefs, and the NFC West, which had the NFC champions in the San Francisco 49ers. Not to mention, because the New England Patriots were the top-seeded team in the AFC East, they will now have to play the top-seeded teams from the AFC North, which was the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson, the former defending MVP, essentially, and the AFC South, which is the Houston Texans. That's going to be a tough schedule for these Patriots, who are now trying to figure out what they're going to be doing without Tom Brady. Shane, I had the New England Patriots finishing with a record of 6-10 and missing out on the playoff for the first time in several years.
Probably in almost 20 years. I'm in agreement with you. I think that they will miss out. I think they're going to go 5-11 though.
So we're somewhat on the same page. I think I just gave them a little bit more of a benefit of doubt of getting one more win in there. I think what we are kind of expecting, though, is the Patriots might even fall towards the top of the lottery in this case. Heck, for all I know, maybe Belichick's wanting to tank this whole thing and tank for Trevor Lawrence.
I mean, that's my philosophy behind it, is that I think Belichick might see something very big in Trevor Lawrence and is going to basically use this season to get his next Tom Brady to groom.
I think, but here's another look at this. The season's going to prove whether it was truly Brady or Belichick who carried the New England Patriots. If the Patriots do well, then obviously it was Belichick, especially if the Buccaneers flop here with Brady as their quarterback. However, if they don't do well, then okay, we can acknowledge that Brady really did have a lot of talent. But I need to see here, truly, if Bill Belichick is as talented of a quarterback-level coach as he seems to be. And we'll have to see that if the Patriots decide to end up having Jarrett Stidham be their starting quarterback.
Which I think, from what I've talked to a few Patriots fans, is that that's what they are hoping for, is to have Stidham come in as the starting QB. But we also got to remember, New England didn't just lose Tom Brady. They lost a lot of key defensive players as well.
I don't think their defense is going to be what it was last year, one of the best defenses. I think this is why we bring in our opinion that it's going to be a rocky year for the New England Patriots, and we won't be seeing them in the playoffs or the Super Bowl this year.
That would be very interesting, man. Just looking back on it, I'm like, wow, did not think I'd see the day, but it's finally here, maybe.
Maybe. We'll have to see. Anyway, moving on. The next team that we have is the Buffalo Bills. Now, Shane and I are pretty much in agreement that we think that the Buffalo Bills, with the Patriots dynasty over and done with Tom Brady going to the NFC, we are confident that with how the Buffalo Bills performed last season, and even judging by the strength of their schedule this year, they could still do fairly well, and they are going to take the AFC East, perhaps within a third or fourth seed. I have their record at 11-5. Shane, you have your record at 10-6. I'm kind of leaning more towards your side now once I think back at their schedule, to be honest.
I that's the main thing, is that when I made my prediction, I literally went down each team's schedule like one by one. I'm like, okay, do I see this like working out? And if like it was a coin flip, I just kind of gave it to whoever I was looking at the time.
Yeah. I don't know, because, I kind of tried to analyze this as best as I could, too. But, the Bills are technically still having the same schedule as the Patriots, just with some slight differences. Instead of playing teams like the Ravens and the Texans, they're playing teams like the Titans and the Steelers.
Which are,
you never know,
both, I think, going to be kind of rough matchups for them.
Mm-hmm. I'm still confident that the Bills will have the AFC East this year. But yeah, it might not be as great of a record as we thought. For all we know, they could be 9-7
and still make it.
And just because everyone else is awful, that's the way it's going to be. I mean, heck, that's how the Philadelphia Eagles did it last.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's move on from that garbage topic. We don't have to talk about them till later.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the New York Jets. McKay, you had them going 4-12. I have them going 5-11. I was feeling a little bit generous towards them because I think Sam Darnold can do something. I think this is going to be like the main year that they're going to decide if he is going to be the person that they need.
See, I don't think that's going to happen, and I think the Jets are going to have to go back to the drawing board and look at some of these new quarterbacks that are coming in there. However, I also could see just simply the fact that the Jets are like, okay, maybe it isn't Darnold. Maybe we really need to cut some of our losses and really just revamp different parts of the team. because I think Darnold definitely has potential.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just the rest is not good. That's why I have them going back into, the top of the draft.
Once again, back at the top. But,
Yeah.
I just feel bad for the teams that have, like, Pitt in the top 5 for, like, 3 years in a row and they're still there. It's like, you guys really need to figure something out.
Yeah, I mean, some teams, they just don't really seem like they can figure it out. Just nothing's working, nothing's gelling. And sadly, sorry Jets fans, but the New York Jets are one of those teams.
All right, let's move on to the Miami Dolphins, who upgraded with numerous draft picks this year, and even grabbing Tua Tagovailoa.
Tagovailoa. Gotta get that in my head. Tagovailoa.
It's gonna take me a while to get that. Tagovailoa. Gosh. Feel bad for the announcers that have to do that all the time.
That one and the Noah Igobana.
I'm not even trying that one.
Oh, no, there's no way. Anyway, Miami Dolphins, I think they did very well in the draft and in their free agency acquisitions. And I say that Brian Flores is still a pretty capable coach. Some of us were expecting the Miami Dolphins to go 0-16 this past season. Guess what? They went 5-11. They did manage to pull some wins together. I think with a more capable team there, with acquisitions like Kyle Van Noy and Byron Jones, players like that they gathered from the draft as well, including Tua Tagovailoa. Granted, if he stays healthy, I have the Miami Dolphins going 7-9. Shane, you bumped it up. You said 8-8.
I told this like pre-draft and in episodes past where I was saying if the Dolphins draft well, I think that they could be contenders for a playoff run. And in the AFC East that feels really, really weak, I think they're going to be the Bills' only competition.
No, and I may agree with that if the Patriots don't pull it together.
That's where it's going to be a swing and a miss. But you also got to remember, the very last game of the season when the Patriots were fighting for that wild card spot, they had to beat the Dolphins, came in, and they lost.
True. It's very true.
And that was with Brady and the stellar defense, and they wanted that bye. So I have a lot of hope for the Dolphins after that game.
Yeah. I don't really have much else to say on that matter. I would like to see how this new Dolphins team, puts it together. We'll see.
All right, let's move on to the AFC North, where we have the Baltimore Ravens. McKay, you have them going 13-3. I have them going 14-2. In all honesty, we were talking earlier, I think that the Baltimore Ravens are probably going to be the top, if not one of like the top 4 teams in the NFL this upcoming season.
I would definitely say that. I think Lamar Jackson has potential to be an MVP candidate again. I have them going 13-3, just to kind of shake things up a little bit. The biggest thing that I'm going to say, which will kind of give it away for me later, though. I mean, I guess you kind of say the same thing with the same record, but if we're looking at what the rankings, what the seeding will be come the time for the playoffs for the AFC, in my mind, I have the Ravens in at the 2nd seed. Which is interesting now because I have the Chiefs in at the 1st seed. They're going to have the same record as the Ravens, but the Chiefs will own the tiebreaker when they play the Ravens this season. That's just how I see it, but the Ravens will definitely own the AFC North. They're just playing at a pretty high level, and I think it's going to be just a little too difficult, especially this season, for the other 3 teams in that division to catch up.
Definitely, and like you said, we'll talk more about the Kansas City Chiefs later on. But let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
So I have the Steelers at a record of 9-7, and Shane, you have them at 11-5. You're very generous as far as how you thought things were going to go for them, which is interesting because we're kind of thinking, we don't know how the AFC North is going to fare against the AFC South. But that's a pretty good record for both the Ravens and the Steelers, at least from your perspective.
Duckmaster does say that he predicts they will go 10-6, so he's right in between us two. He's assuming that Big Ben goes back to Pro Bowl form, which could very well happen. The interesting thing that you say, McKay, is that you say that AFC South teams are going to be rough for the AFC North. One of my 5 losses that I had the Pittsburgh Steelers going to is the Jacksonville Jaguars. for the main reason is that, like, for the past, like, 3 or 4 years, it's like, no matter how good the Steelers have been, the Jaguars have always just been able to slip past them for whatever reason. And so it's kind of getting to that point where it's like, oh, this is a team that the Steelers don't do well against, but the other team does well against. And we have a few other of those in the NFL as well.
Right. I think, however, though, what we are trying to portray here, Shane, that you and I are in agreement with, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers will not win the AFC North title, but they will go to the playoffs in a wild card.
Yeah, maybe even the number 7 wild card.
You know, in my personal opinion, I have them higher than that. I have them fighting for the 5 or 6 seed. But I would, and even with this 9 and 7 seeding that I have, I still expect that sort of performance from them.
Oh,
Will
yeah.
they make it past the wild card game? I don't know. I don't know if they can make a deep run in the playoffs, especially with the Chiefs and the Ravens hanging around. But, you know, I think it's definitely, it's not impossible.
All right. So let's move on to the Cleveland Browns. McKay, you said that they were going to go 8-8. I said they were going to go 6-10.
You know, the thing is I was being generous when I said 8-8, but the truth be told, when I look at how, you know, I don't know, they have a new head coach. They have, you know, they've gotten this O-line protection for Baker Mayfield now. They've got Austin Hooper in a tight end. It looks like, you know, Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be healthy again, and they look like they're primed for a lot of success. But we said the same thing last year, that they were going to, you know, do really well. They were going to break their playoffs, lack of playoffs streak. And it hasn't happened. I don't see it happening this year. I don't, at the very least, maybe trying to sneak in for a 7th seed, but they're not going to get it. And you have it even worse. You're putting them still that they're going to be towards the top of the draft again.
I see it as if Baker Mayfield doesn't show up this year, then it's time to cut the ties and start from the top again with the Browns quarterback cycle.
Oh my gosh. Let's not get into that. Let's move on to the Bengals. They got a new quarterback.
Speaking of the Bengals with their new quarterback, McKay, this is one of the ones that we absolutely 100% agree on. We both think that the Bengals with Joe Burrow are going to go 4-12.
Let me make this very clear. I think Burrow's going to have a decent season. I think, you know, him and with working with some of his receivers, I think he's going to show off just how talented he is, but the rest of the team is not going to be able to deliver.
You think it's going to be like a Arizona Cardinals situation last year with Kyler Murray?
I think Joe Burrow, if he plays at the level that he did at college and adjusts to the NFL well, he's going to be Rookie of the Year this year.
Really?
Hey, that's just my theory because I'm really well in a college setting. I understand the NFL is stronger and faster and, you know, better, but if Joe Burrow is up to the task, Joe Exotic Burrow is going to deliver.
Oh no! Why? Why are you bringing that into this show? Gosh dang it! I was hoping we could avoid all the Tiger King references since he's LSU and now he's a Bengal. But here's the thing. I'm not sure if he will get Offensive Rookie of the Year or Rookie of the Year, mainly because we have kind of had our thoughts with Rookies of the Year before. I think that as of right now, from seeing a lot of people, I think it could be like him or a defensive player. It will be interesting to see like Isaiah Simmons or Jeff Okuda. Those are like the kind of 3 that I'm thinking of. Maybe even Chase Young.
Mm-hmm.
But with this, I honestly am still upset that Kyler Murray won the Offensive Rookie of the Year because we both agree it should have been Josh Jacobs.
I do agree, and so I don't want to spend too much time as far as what my expectations are for Joe Burrow because either way, it's still not going to get them to the playoffs. They are still going to be stuck picking very early in the draft. I am still very confident in that, especially when they play against teams in the AFC South at the level that they are right now, and they have competitors in their division like the Steelers and the Ravens.
Yeah, I think they're just going to get beat around by 2 separate divisions, and it's just going to be a bad time for them.
Yep.
But that will give them time to stock up even more for Joe Burrow and reload that Bengals team so that they can come back and possibly make a push the season after. But let's move on to the AFC West where we have the Kansas City Chiefs, Sorry, trying to get my talking again. You have the Chiefs going 13-3 like you did with the Baltimore Ravens. Ironically, I had the Chiefs going 14-2 like I did with the Baltimore Ravens, with them also claiming that number 1 seed.
Which, and you and I have spoken about this before. We've even spoken about it on this episode, that we are fairly confident that the Chiefs are going to return to the Super Bowl this season. It's just kind of the vibe that we get, that is going to be how it's going to shake out in the AFC. Just because, Patrick Mahomes is going to continue to play at an excellent level. Andy Reid is still a very good coach. And they've still got a lot of very excellent weapons on their team that, it still looks like that Super Bowl team. I think it will just really need to evaluate how they're going to perform throughout the season. I think it's going to be easy at times. They play teams in the AFC East. But if I'm looking at it right now, let's see, the AFC West also has to play the Nfc South. So they're going to have to play teams like the New Orleans Saints. Patrick Mahomes will have to see how well Tom Brady does against him because they're going to play the Buccaneers. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think the Chiefs are going to be the best team. I think we might be looking at the next Patriot dynasty with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't doubt it.
But let's move on to the Denver Broncos. McKay, we both agree on this one. We are thinking they're going to go 8-8.
I'm not going to see anything too impressive with the Broncos this year. They may try and flirt with a 7 seed, but again, I don't think it's going to be quite enough. I think we're still going to be seeing a little bit more of rebuilding for the Broncos. It's not their time yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement. I think maybe another season they'll be back into their playoff form, but as of right now, they're close, but no luck.
I think that's it for them. Let's talk about those Raiders going to Las Vegas. This is an interesting one because you don't know really how it's going to be, especially, with a brand new stadium and everything like that, and there may not even be fans there. It's going to be really interesting to see how the Raiders are going to adjust with this move and everything. But, Shane, you and I are somewhat in agreement. I was a little more generous than you were, but we believe that the Raiders are not going to do well this season. I have them at 5-11. You have them at 4-12.
Part of the reason I have them at 4-12 is because they are going to be at a new stadium, and yes, it's going to be a new stadium. It's going to be their own. It's going to feel nice. But if the season happens with no fans in the stadium, I feel like for them, it's still going to be very new, and it's just going to feel like an away game for them.
Yeah, and again, with as far as their competitors go this year, okay, sure, they get to play teams in the AFC East who we don't have super high opinions about, apart from maybe the Buffalo Bills. But they do still have to play the NFC South. There's teams there that I think are definitely. I think all 4 teams are more than capable of handling this Raiders team.
Oh, by far. The Buccaneers loaded up. The Saints are going to be the top dogs, in my opinion. Panthers loaded up with Teddy. I feel like it's going to be a rough time for them.
And so I think that's just what justifies our reasoning for the Raiders just having a ranking here so low. And just to put it into perspective, as we move on here to the Los Angeles Chargers, I know that, we're not entirely sure of their quarterback situation here, but we were a bit more generous to the Chargers than we were to the Raiders. We agreed that the Chargers would go 6-10.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Chargers might do a little bit more than the Raiders. I don't see the Raiders honestly producing a whole lot this season, but maybe the next season.
Yeah, I think, again, it's just going to still be rebuilding here, trying to figure out exactly what their identity is now without Phillip Rivers, especially considering whatever this new quarterback is, they're going to have to get used to playing in a situation where that offensive line isn't going to hold up that well.
Yeah, it might go down in a matter of 1 second, which is sad.
That is the AFC West. We're now moving on to the AFC South. We have the Houston Texans up first. Shane, we agreed once again, 10-6 for the Houston Texans. Now, some of you may be thinking, wow, okay, that's kind of low for a Texans team for the AFC South. Because, Shane, we're in agreement here that the Texans are going to take the division.
Yeah, which is a shocking thing, mainly because they lost probably their biggest player in DeAndre Hopkins. Deshaun Watson's best target all around, but I think Deshaun Watson's good enough where he will be able to make it work without him. I think Hopkins is going to be missed, but I feel like the Texans are still probably the strongest team in the AFC South.
I think so. And we're going to get to that because some people are thinking, whoa, have you did you not pay attention to the Titans during the playoffs? We're going to get into that. But, we have to keep in mind, too, the Texans, as far as, a record of only 10-6, you have to keep in mind, they're going to play the Chiefs. They're going to play the Ravens. They're going to play the Packers. They're going to play, some tough teams there. And that's just kind of what's led us to that decision of, okay, this is how it's going to be as far as the Texans playing teams that are not in their division. And also the fact that, Shane, you and I are in agreement. The AFC South is one of the most competitive divisions in the NFL right now. Those four teams like to beat each other up.
They really do. I think Peyton Manning set the tone for that.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. That's our case with the Texans. We still say that they're going to win the AFC South, which now brings us to the Tennessee Titans. Shane, let's hear your prediction first.
First of all, I hate to say this. It pains me to say this. I have the Tennessee Titans going 9-7, just barely beating out the Texans, or barely missing the Texans by losing that one extra game for the Texans to take the entire division.
Which is interesting that you say that. Because you're still thinking that the Tennessee Titans will flirt with a wild card. Am I correct?
I think that they'll flirt with it. I don't know if they'll get it, but I think that they will definitely flirt with it.
Gotcha. So here's my prediction. I say the Titans are going to go 8-8.
Breaking even?
Now, yeah, they're going to break even. It's going to be an even 500, and they are not going to go to the playoffs. Now, people may be thinking, did you not? They were in the AFC Championship last year. They actually were leading the Chiefs at one point. Look at Derrick Henry. They'd be like, McKay, why are you thinking this? This is it's a bit of a bold prediction. I think Ryan Tannehill is not going to be all that. I think what we saw last season was a bit of a fluke, and that sort of thing is not going to be repeated, and the Titans are going to miss out and slightly suffer for it.
See, you have a different take than I do. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to be fine, and he's not going to be elite. He's definitely going to be an upgrade over Mariota, but I think he's going to be average. What I think is going to happen is that with that deep playoff run, a lot of people saw the way that Derrick Henry runs and how he is able to move around as a running back for the Tennessee Titans. And I think with that in mind, when teams go to play them, they're like, we need to eliminate the biggest player. Who's the biggest player on their team? Derrick Henry. And they're going to come out with ways to, because they have more footage and more close-up seeing that they did that playoff run. Because a few years ago when they didn't do anything, it didn't matter. But now, he's a threat.
Definitely. And I would say that, I agree with you on that, Shane. And I would say that, plus coupled with my theory that Tannehill won't produce the way they expect him to, it's going to lead to them missing out on the playoffs, which I know you're not going to complain about because you don't like the Titans.
I do not. But go ahead. Anyway. Let's move on to the Indianapolis Colts. McKay, go ahead and give us what you got with the Colts.
I'm being really nice here. I'm being really nice to Phillip Rivers. Being really nice to Colts fans. I have them at 9-7, but I don't really know if that is going to shake out that way. Again, just because it's the AFC South, they like to beat each other up. Phillip Rivers is getting up there in age. I think it's going to come down to really how well Rivers can connect with some of his receivers, whether it's T.Y. Hilton, that sort of thing. I do have them at 9-7. Shane, you have them at 7-9.
I just think they're going to go a little short, honestly. I think Phillip Rivers gained to that old Eli Manning part, and it's not going to be doing too hot.
And I find it interesting, Phillip Rivers just basically got accepted to be a high school football coach. They announced that, very recently that guess what? He already has a job lined up for once he's out of the NFL. And I'm wondering if that's something where it's kind of like, hey, guess what? It's this might be the farewell tour. I don't know. Hard to say. But I think we're going to get a very good idea of how Phillip Rivers is going to do with a new team, a brand new team. We'll get that kind of idea within the first 3 games.
All right, let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I know a lot of people are going to say I'm being a little optimistic, which I feel like I am compared to most people's thoughts. I'm saying that they're going to go 7-9.
And let's hear your reasoning behind that.
So, when I was looking at their schedule, a lot of what is going to hinder on is if they can win their games early. If they can, because the first half of their schedule is manageable. It's not perfect. It's not super easy. But there's a lot of games where they can very easily win. It's when it gets to that back area where we have to play like the Packers, the Ravens, it's going to start getting a little rocky and a little tougher for them to fight. And in all honesty, like I said earlier, part of the reason I'm talking up that 7-9 is because we have a good history against the Steelers. We have a bad history against the Chargers, but we've been doing well against them as of late, minus that one game last season. So I'm still like on the fence about that one. But I can see them possibly tying for last or having the Colts come in last instead.
Which I could also see as well. However,
I
was generous. I said the Jaguars finished with a record of 5-11. And I think what's really going to I think your only motivation at this point, I think the thing that will be the driving force, at least will keep Jacksonville somewhat alive, is the abilities of Gardner Minshew. I think if he does really well, then yeah, I think the Jaguars will be like, okay, let's rally around him and let's build for him for the future. If he doesn't do well, the Jacksonville Jaguars might as well just pack up and tank for Trevor.
See, my philosophy behind it is that he doesn't have anybody around him to work with outside of DJ Chark.
Right.
If Tyler Eifert can stay healthy, he could be a good tight end. But that offensive line has been terrible for all of our quarterbacks. Our running back is so-so. We have one good receiver. The way I'm seeing it is that if the front office with Doug Marrone and Dave Caldwell want to keep their jobs, they need to show a little bit of something with as much as they can. I feel like it's going to come from coaching, fighting tooth and nail to keep their jobs.
I would agree. I think this is make it or break it for Caldwell and for Marrone this season. If the Jacksonville Jaguars don't do well, they're out. They're done. Yep.
And I think that might be motivation enough just to hopefully get third in the AFC South. I do not think that they are the worst team in the NFL going into this season, though.
I don't think they are either, and that'll be more apparent once we go into the NFC here. We're starting out with the NFC East, which everyone here knows that Shane and I have a very, very, very low opinion of this division, specifically with one team. But first team that we're going to be talking about here is the Philadelphia Eagles. Shane, I was a little nice. I said the Eagles are going to go 9-7. You said 7-9. However, even with my 9-7 record, I think they're going to miss out on the playoffs.
Oh yeah, I don't think the Eagles are going to be the best team going into this season, and they're going to miss out.
I don't think they did all that well in the draft. I didn't see much coming out of them for free agency. They lost players like Malcolm Jenkins. And Carson Wentz, man, that guy, I just think he's made out of glass. I'm not seeing it.
He'll never be a Philly special.
He will never be Philly special. But then again, I don't think Philly special with Nick Foles is going to happen in Chicago either.
I don't think it will.
We'll get to that. The next up is it's the Dallas Cowboys. This hurts, Shane.
This hurts.
But we both said the Cowboys would finish with an 11-5 record.
It hurts.
And we said this because Mike McCarthy, if he proves to be a capable coach, then boom, the Cowboys are going to be in it. And they got CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm like, CeeDee Lamb was probably the steal of the draft for them.
I think I said, but yeah, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, all those guys, Blake Jarwin as their tight end, all those guys are really, really good. And Zeke's still there. And Dak, he's a good quarterback.
Or Dalton.
Or even Andy Dalton. But I'm not going to dog on Dak. He is a decent enough quarterback, in my opinion. I personally believe that if McCarthy cannot bring this team together to make a deep run in the playoffs, then there's no other way around it. The Cowboys just straight up suck. And they're just not good with Jerry Jones or anything like that. Which, again, I'm not going to complain if that's the case. I think every single fan base, except for the Cowboys fan base, is going to be like, oh, I knew that all along. It's going to be determined this season with this almost like dream team that the Cowboys look like they're putting together on offense.
I know so many Cowboys fans that would just be so angry at us saying that they're terrible even with an 11-5 record that we're predicting.
I'm saying is if they don't deliver on that 11-5 record.
Oh yeah, they're garbage.
They're toast. Forget about the Cowboys. No one will ever be able to take the Cowboys fans seriously ever again.
No one takes them seriously ever again now.
You're not wrong. Yeah, what am I saying? Hello.
It's like nobody takes them seriously except for the fans themselves.
Anyway,
all right.
On, next up we have is the New York Giants. Shane, our record predictions are different here, but I think you and I are somewhat on the same page with this. We think the New York Giants are going to pick first in the draft next year.
Oh, by far. I think that they are the worst team in the NFL.
I have them with a 3-13 record. You have them with a 2-14 record.
You know, I felt like doing 1-15 or 0-16 was a little too mean. I wanted to give them 2.
I think that the only thing they have good going for them really right now is Saquon Barkley, and he didn't have a good season last year anyway. So now it's sort of this thing of what's he up to this time? You know, and even with the bits of upgrades with the O-line or anything like that, I still feel like Daniel Jones won't really be able to take that team very far. And their defense is still not good.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad for them. I don't really care too much because I'm not a big Giants fan either. Like they're in the bottom with the Cowboys and the Titans for me. So for me, it's like, I don't really care too much.
Yeah. So moving on, next we have up is the Washington Redskins. We at least pegged them to have a better record than the Giants. I said 5-11. You said 4-12. That's going to be an improvement on what they did this past year, but not by much. And I think that mainly lies in the fact that I don't see Dwayne Haskins as a capable quarterback in the NFL, and even adding someone like Chase Young isn't going to improve their defense all of that much.
I think what it's going to come down to is how much can Ron Rivera do for this Washington Redskins team. It feels like they have a lot of pieces there, but they don't know what to do with them. And I still feel like with the pieces there, they're going to be like, oh, this isn't actually the piece that we need. We need a different piece, and then they're going to fall and do bad.
I would agree with that.
So let's move on to the NFC North with the Green Bay Packers. McKay, we both agreed they're going to go 10-6.
And with this, we are saying Packers will not win the NFC North.
Nope, that's going to belong to another team that we're going to get to in a moment. But part of the reason I think they're falling 10-6 is because I honestly feel like they had possibly the worst draft out of all the teams this past season.
I would agree. We don't really know if this whole Jordan Love drafting thing is going to affect things for Aaron Rodgers, but they didn't give him the answers that he needs as far as what's going to improve them and really take them to the next level and get Rodgers back to another Super Bowl. And Rodgers is not getting any younger. They will still make a wild card spot. I do not doubt that, but I do not see them taking the NFC North this year. That, we believe, that title is going to go to the Minnesota Vikings, who, yes, they did lose Stephon Diggs, but Shane and I predict that the Vikings will both go 12. We both predicted they will go 12-4.
With Aaron Rodgers eventually coming to them to get a revenge tour against the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, don't go there.
I'm sorry, it's been blowing up on social media, and I just think it's too funny to pass up.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I think there might have just been a lot of animosity and drama with Stephon Diggs and Kirk Cousins last season. And I wonder now with Stephon Diggs being gone, if things might get a little bit better, if Kirk Cousins is really going to be able to improve in prime time. And you know what? And if that's the case, we may see the Vikings, possibly even going to the NFC Championship. Not the Super Bowl. I don't know about that, but
I think that they might go to the championship, if not the semifinal.
Yeah, definitely. And that's just how we see it right now. We're just saying, nope, Vikings over Packers. We'll have to see if Aaron Rodgers will end up disproving that theory.
But let's move on to the next team, which is the Chicago Bears. McKay, I will let you take this one away.
Okay. Well, let's start off with the predictions. Shane, you said 8-8, which is the same record they had this past season. I actually said that they're going to go 7-9, which, I'm not. You know how I am. I'm not always the kindest to my team. I try and be as realistic as possible. I think the Bears could do fairly well within the first few games of their schedule, but it's afterwards where I think things are going to get really difficult and might just spiral out of control. I also don't think I think that basically what is going to happen this season is more of last season, where the only thing that's going to keep them somewhat alive is the defense, because the defense still looks like it's going to do pretty well, especially if Robert Quinn has a season like he did last season, and if Akeem Hicks is there and he doesn't get injured, then both those two are pretty powerful. And if those two are causing enough havoc, here comes Khalil Mack. It's going to be tough.
But on the other side of that, you have Mitchell Trubisky and you have Nick Foles, where I feel like even Bears fans have no idea who their starting quarterback is at this point.
I know. I have no clue. That is still an open competition. We don't know. They did give up Mitchell Trubisky's fifth-year option, but Ryan Pace still remains adamant that Trubisky will be a part of the future. So they're basically giving him the chance here. I will make a prediction, Shane. I think that Foles, if he wins the starting quarterback job, will do better in Chicago than he did in Jacksonville.
Which, bringing that up, so one thing that I think you and me are personally both excited for, we get to have our little personal rivalry where we have the Chicago Bears face the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. And the last time this happened was in 2016 in December. We were messaging each other about it.
It's true. And the Jaguars won by 1 point, which was funny.
By 1 point, and what was the score? It was like 12, 15 to 16. One with the field. One with the field goal though. That was a disappointing game.
It was, but remember, neither of those teams were very good at that point.
That's true, and we still haven't made that much progression from there. But with that, I do think the Bears have a chance to flirt with the playoff spot and getting that number 7 at the very minimum. They have some hurdles to conquer, but I think they have a chance.
I will say this. If the Bears want to get in even just the 7th seed in the wild card, a few things will need to happen. One, the defense will need to be the way it was 2 seasons ago when they won the NFC North. That is the first thing that needs to happen. The second thing, which might be slightly even more important than that, is what I mentioned earlier, where I think Nick Foles, if he wins the starting quarterback job, he will do better under Nagy's system, which he's familiar with, than he did in Jacksonville. But it will need to be essentially a revival career where he kind of plays the way he did when he won a Super Bowl with Philadelphia. I don't think that will happen, but it would need to happen to give the Bears a shot at the playoffs.
It's very interesting that you say that Foles will fit well in that system, because we got his old coach to come to Jacksonville and to set him up with his old coach the year that he won the Super Bowl from the Eagles, and that did not pan out well. So I'm very interested to see how he's going to do in Nagy's system with the Bears.
Oh, see, the thing is that you analyze it, the Bears, especially with Nagy, because Nagy was trained by Andy Reid, as was Doug Peterson at the Eagles. That's how basically that's going to look for Nick Foles. It's the system he's very familiar with. You mentioned how they would have a coach come from the Eagles down to the Jaguars to help Nick Foles there. I think in those cases, you also have to take into effect He got injured and was out for most of the season, and when he came back, he was just cold. It was one of those things. But if he stays healthy, and that will be what we're seeing. That's what could possibly happen. Otherwise, it's just going to be Trubisky, and it's going to be what we saw last year.
All right, let's move on to the Detroit Lions. McKay, I think this is probably our tied for our second or third worst team. You said they were going to go 4-12. I say they're going to go 3-13.
We don't have much faith in the Lions, and I think Matt Patricia's going to get fired after this. I think Matt Stafford might end up getting traded. The Fords just need to sell that team.
Yeah, it's looking kind of rough in Detroit for the Lions, but I don't see much hope for them. I feel like they had a solid draft, but I still feel like there's just a lot missing there, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly where it is with Matthew Stafford there. You feel like they have a lot of good people, but they're just not putting it together.
Yeah, I would definitely. That's a good assumption, or that's a good analysis. Let's go on to the NFC West. We have the former NFC West champions in the San Francisco 49ers up first. I have them going at a record of 12-4. Shane, you said 11-5. My prediction here is that barring a really weird Super Bowl hangover, the 49ers will be able to do about as well as they did last season, and they may even make a return trip to the Super Bowl.
Are you saying we're going to have a Super Bowl rematch?
I don't want to say that yet because there's one more team we haven't discussed yet, which everyone knows pretty much who that's going to be. I think is going to be the team that stops the Niners if that happens.
And since we're talking about that, let's move on back. So you're saying the 49ers are going to take the NFC West. I'm saying our next team, the Seattle Seahawks, are going to take it. They're going to go 13-3, and you said they're going to go 10-6.
I think the Seahawks, personally, if I'm looking at it as far as how I see the wild card rounds going, in my head, I have the Seahawks actually taking the last seed, taking the 7th seed.
Really?
I think I really do, and which would be fun because in my mind, I have the 49ers into the 2nd seed.
Oh, I see.
Matchup. It would be a divisional matchup, and then at that point, we would really need to see, okay, can the 49ers beat the Seahawks? Because, man, those two, they compete hard. I think it would be great to see a third matchup with them.
Yeah, see, I kind of want to see that third matchup a little bit down the road, so I see the 49ers doing well, and I see the Seahawks taking that. Here's the way I see it. I see it as going into either a semifinal or a quarterfinal game with those two. I feel like it's going to be more of a semifinal, and the Seahawks and the 49ers are going to battle it out, and the Seahawks are going to knock out the 49ers right then and there.
Yeah, and you know what? It could go either way there. In this case, I see it being the Niners. You see it being the Seahawks. We'll have to see. But it's two teams that know each other that well, huh?
Yep. And we'll talk about teams that know each other well later on, but let's move on to another team, the LA Rams. I said that they were going to go 8-8. You said they were going to go 6-10.
I think that the days of Sean McVay and his powerful Rams come to an end. I think that, without Todd Gurley, who really, they should have utilized him much more on the offense last season than they did, and they kind of went more with Jared Goff, who just flopped hard. I just think that's what's going to ultimately lead to their downfall. They lost Cooks. He's not playing for them anymore. They lost Dante Fowler. Gurley's gone. So it's Jared Goff basically helming what used to be like a really capable offense. It's really just him and Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I was going to say him and Kupp.
You look over at their defense with Fowler gone, Weddle retired, Ramsey doesn't look like what he used to be, so it's just Aaron Donald.
Yep. Plus, their new uniforms look like somebody just threw up on them.
Look, Little League uniforms. That's what they look like. Little League football uniforms.
I'm actually gonna pull up a picture of it.
Oh,
so,
boy.
yeah. So this is the point that we are getting to, ladies and gentlemen. Oh boy. So, here.
They do look like IKEA's logo a little bit.
They do, but
yeah.
So the one thing that I want to point out. So if you have time, I know this isn't the best quality, you can't see too terribly much, but if you look closely at the 2 and the 0, it looks like somebody colored it in with a marker. Like, there's just this little white, like, highlight that I think they tried to form into look like a ram horn. It looks so bad. And then we have their other one, which is the blue one. I actually like the blue one. I'm not hating on the blue one, but the white one was ugly. I like the two-tone number, honestly, but all in all, the Rams, I have very low hopes for the Rams at this point.
Let's make one more thing clear, Shane, especially if it comes to pass where we don't have fans in stadiums. Guess what? The Rams and the Chargers are playing in a brand new stadium this year, too.
Yep, same stadium, so that's probably why they have similar colors. My goodness, there's so much bad going on in LA.
Let's move on from LA. LA is a Lakers and sometimes a Dodgers town. I've said it so many times.
LA does not need football.
Nope, it does not. Chargers go back to San Diego. Rams go back to St. Louis.
For real. Which is sad because the Rams were originally in LA, and then they went to St. Louis, and now they're back, and it's still sad.
Let's move on. We have the Arizona Cardinals next, which I have them at a record of 8-8. Shane, you have them at 6-10. Now, I think this is obviously a huge improvement from last year, and a lot of that revolves around the fact that DeAndre Hopkins will now be someone that Kyler Murray can pass to. And Isaiah Simmons has now been drafted there as well, who might be able to be just a wrecking ball on defense. However, at least at this point, we're still saying, Cardinals, you still got a ways to go before you make the playoffs again.
Especially in that tough NFC West with the 49ers and the Seahawks.
Yeah.
I just don't see it happening, and in all honesty, I still don't have the highest hopes for Kyler Murray. I really don't.
Have to see. I think his sophomore season will really determine did he deserve that Rookie of the Year award, if you know what I mean.
I don't even think he deserved his Rookie of the Year. We talked about it before, so I'm not going to spend time about it. If you want to watch it, go to our YouTube channel. We have past podcasts uploaded there, and I talked about why I do not think that he deserved the Rookie of the Year award.
Very true. So, if oh, wow. Hey, need to talk again. Hello. With that out of the way, let's move on to the NFC South, our last division. Next, we have the New Orleans Saints, which we agreed, record of 14-2. Shane, and this is many people know that this is our opinion as far as how the Super Bowl is going to go this next year. It'll be the Saints versus the Chiefs, and Drew Brees will get his second ring. That's just sort of this theory that Shane and I have as far as how this next season is going to go down.
Yep, and so we were talking about a little bit like how the playoffs, like how I saw like the Seahawks and the 49ers duking it out. The other two teams I can see duking it out are the New Orleans Saints and the Minnesota Vikings.
Those two do not like each other these days.
The only reason I want this is because I want the Saints to come in to finally pass the Minnesota Vikings roadblock that they have hit for the past like 3 to 4 seasons, go to the Super Bowl and win it. That is what I am wanting. And then just watch Drew Brees walk off into the sunset.
That's exactly it. The ride off in the sunset right into retirement. And then if Sean Payton does well enough, maybe Jameis Winston's the next QB for the
Oh boy. Oh no. I think it'd be better to make your Swiss Army knife the starting QB at that point.
Yeah.
Oh. Or find somebody else. Anyways, that's what I see for the New Orleans Saints. I think they're going to do well. Let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons, where we have very different opinions over here.
Very different. And this is what, Shane, let's hear yours first.
So, mine is the lower disappointing one. I'm saying the Falcons are going to go 7-9.
That's the disappointing one. Hear me out on this for the people who are listening. And Shane, hear me out too.
I'm listening. I find this funny just looking at it.
Falcons, okay, Matt Ryan can still be a very capable quarterback. Julio Jones is still a good wide receiver. They just got Todd Gurley, who could have a revival career in Atlanta. Dante Fowler Jr., and possibly, you and I have talked about this before, it'd be crazy if, say, Yannick Ngakoue ended up going to the Falcons as well. That defense looks like it's going to be beefed up, which was their biggest issue last year. Because of that, this is a very bold prediction. I have the Falcons going in into the 5th wild card spot because obviously the Saints are going to take the division. And I have them going in at the 5th seed with an 11-5 record.
See, I can see that. I can definitely see the Falcons making a playoff run, but looking at like their Week 16, I feel like they have one of the tougher schedules where in Week 16 they got to face the defending Super Bowl champions in the Kansas City Chiefs, which is going to knock them down a peg. And I just feel like they're going to have a rougher schedule compared to most of the NFC South.
It's a very bold prediction. I understand that. And so I think it's more of this thing of I think I am saying that the Falcons will surprise us this year. It's just they're the team that I've pegged to be like the surprise.
Yeah, I can definitely see them as a sleeper team because on our post-draft episode, we even talked about how the Falcons filled the holes that they needed to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're definitely going to be a team to watch. We could see them come around like they did when they went to the Super Bowl against the Patriots and hopefully not drop the ball and go and blow a 28-3 lead.
I was going to make a joke about that. You beat me to it.
Okay, that is what they are known for. They need to fix their history.
Certainly do.
All right, so let's move on to our next team, which is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My goodness. Okay, so you do know that the nickname that people have given them is the Tampa Bay Gronkaneers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you can already tell just by that name alone how many Patriot fans went over to be Buccaneer fans.
Let's go get into this. Let's just get into this really quick. We'll make it really quick, Shane, okay? Because I'm already getting sick and tired of this anyway. I said an 8-8 record. You said a 5-11 record. We're not buying it with Brady or with Gronk.
Yeah, I don't see the Buccaneers doing that great. Anyways, let's move on to the Carolina Panthers, our last team for the night. We've gone through all 32 teams. McKay, you said 6-10. I said 7-9.
And I'm just saying that more of like the Panthers are going to improve with Matt Rule as the head coach. And Teddy Bridgewater, he's going to be able to stick around, be a good, capable quarterback there. I just think their schedule is going to be a little too tough for them to really do much damage.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to come in and be able to fix a lot of what was going on, give Christian McCaffrey that other offensive weapon. That way there's at least 2 on that team now. But I still don't think that they're going to be the best team, mainly because they have a really tough schedule ahead of them.
Definitely. And with that, those are our 32 teams as far as predictions go. We'll see how things go once the season actually starts. Let's go over just as a bit of a recap here, Shane. You and I are going to be talking about what we consider to be the easier schedules with more forgiving opponents for certain teams, and also which teams we feel are going to be having some pretty tough schedules. Now, let's make this clear. This is not us saying, according to how the NFL has put it out, that these teams have the easiest schedule and these teams have the toughest schedules. We're just talking about these teams that are going to have a tough run and also the teams that have a bit more of forgiving little bits of their schedule. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So as far as teams that are going to have easier schedules that are very forgiving, the number one is the Baltimore Ravens.
Part of the reason I think we gave them a 14-2 record is because it feels like they have the easiest schedule in the NFL.
And the reason for that being is because Lamar Jackson can definitely, at the very least, he can go toe-to-toe with Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, possibly beat them, which could, definitely shift into his favor. We'll have to see.
He's beaten Watson before.
Exactly. They're playing the NFC East, which we always consider the dumpster fire of the NFL right now.
Their biggest matchup is going to be the Cowboys in that, so...
Exactly. And then their AFC North competition. Yes, battles with the Steelers might be a little difficult, but I don't think they're going to have trouble handling the Browns or the Bengals. And so that sort of competition, that's going to give the Ravens an edge there.
Our next team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is weird because we said that they were going to lose a lot, but it feels like a lot of their toughest matchups are at home games, and honestly, I still don't have faith in Brady. I haven't had faith in Brady in the past season or two. I feel like he's kind of regressed.
Yes, and you say that. I think what's going to help them, though, is if they want to win, if they want to do well, it's with the hope that their toughest matchups, they're lucky, they are home games, it is with their home crowd, But also, we've talked about too that Tom Brady's acquisition, him being brought on to the Buccaneers, sales down at the stadium for the Buccaneers, but I don't know if that's going to be much of a difference.
Yeah, but we never know. We'll have to wait and see. Our next team with an easy schedule, we believe, is the San Francisco 49ers, and I feel like they could honestly have the easiest because they have to play the NFC East and the AFC East, which I feel like the AFC East at this point is the dumpster fire of the AFC. NFC East is the dumpster fire of the NFC.
Long story short, the San Francisco 49ers are going to have many, many bye weeks.
Yeah, they practically just got 8 easy win games right then and there.
Most likely, yes. Their toughest competition likely being
the Bills.
The Cowboys.
Oh, Cowboys and Bills.
The next one up is actually the Chicago Bears. We are more saying that they're on this list just because their first 3 games are against teams that didn't do that well and didn't go to the playoffs last year. Also, the Bears had the opportunity to close most of their end of their season in Soldier Field apart from the game in Jacksonville, which, if they're hoping to finish strong, that's definitely going to be something that's going to help them.
That I honestly think, for us personally, is just going to be the game to watch because of our passion for both of our teams, and also Nick Foles, the former Jazz quarterback in Chicago, and then it's going to be so much going on.
Stay tuned, fans, for the podcast before Week 16. There's going to be a lot of trash talking.
And the week after.
Probably. Anyway, to close it out, the last team that we say has an easier schedule, a more forgiving schedule, is the Cleveland Browns, because all of their primetime games are going to be at home.
Yep. With that, I mean, I feel like that's pretty beneficial to them. It's going to make it a lot easier. Home games are always usually easier. But let's move on to some of those tougher schedules. Go ahead.
Oh, no, let's hear it.
All right. Number 1, we have the New England Patriots, and this is why I'm pegging them for pretty low. I feel like they have tough teams to go through. They have to go through the Chiefs. They have to go through the Niners. They have to go through the Ravens, the Texans, the Seahawks, the Titans, the Bills. That's 7 playoff caliber teams that are probably going to finish with, I think the Bills might be mocked as one of the lower ones, if not the Titans, but they're still going to be going around like 10 wins each.
Patriots are going to be without Tom Brady, and all 7 of those teams made the playoffs last season.
It is not going to be a fun time for New England. I think Bill Belichick has got his hands full if he wants to even try to get to the playoffs this year.
Definitely. Our number 2 is the New York Giants. They will have to play the Ravens and the 49ers and the Seahawks and the Cowboys twice. And Shane, we don't really need to go much more beyond this because you and I already think the Giants are going to be picking first in the lottery anyway. Or not the lottery, the draft, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. We think they're the worst team anyways, and then they just have those as kind of smack to the face, which moves us on to our other team that's probably like in the top 3 or 4, which is the Washington Redskins, and they got to play the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Seahawks, and the Cowboys twice. So basically the same thing as the Giants, except instead of the 49ers, they got the defending Super Bowl champions. Lucky them.
Yeah, it's it'll be fun. Yep. And then after that, at our number 4, we have the Arizona Cardinals. And this comes down more to the facts of the division that they play in. They'll have to play the 49ers twice. They'll have to play the Seahawks twice. They may have to play the Rams twice. Well, I mean, they will have to play the Rams twice, but the Rams could be tough. You never know.
Could be. We don't know with them.
And they do have to play the Cowboys. So
they got at least 5 tough games, and if the Rams come back, they got 7 tough games. They got about half of their schedule, just not a fun time for them.
Rounding it out is our now DeAndre Hopkins-less Houston Texans, who will have to play the Ravens, the defending Super Bowl champions, and the Chiefs, the Packers, the Vikings, and the Titans twice.
Which all went to the playoffs last year, and the Chiefs and the Titans went to the AFC Championship game. It's going to be a slugfest for them.
Would agree.
I think they can manage it out, at least against the Titans. They might be able to sneak one past the Packers or the Vikings.
Yep. And that will really determine how, as far as like who's going to be the top dog in the AFC South, is really just how well the Texans can perform now, with things being a little different without DeAndre Hopkins.
All right, and then we have our next part, which is the best games to watch throughout this season.
So for this, we have what we've ranked as to be the 5 best games.
Yep, we got you cut out for a minute. We got the 5 best games of what I think everybody is going to want to sit down and watch, and it's going to be competitive, strong, gritty football.
Actually, and we have six games that are going to be here. We did one little bonus one.
We do. But let's start with number 1, which is going to be the Chiefs versus the Ravens, which I can honestly see being that game, which is going to happen September 28th as of right now, unless things change due to schedule changes. I could see that being an AFC Championship game as well.
That'll be a fun one. Jackson versus Mahomes. Yeah, that'll be exciting.
And then on our number 2, we have the Saints versus the Chiefs, which will take place December 20th.
You have said that might be a potential Super Bowl preview.
Like I said, good games to watch.
Yeah. Number 3 is sort of a bit of a revenge game for the Baltimore Ravens, and it's versus the Titans on November 22nd. They might be able to avenge that embarrassing loss that they had in the divisional round in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, I think the Ravens are out for blood, and I don't think the Titans know exactly what's going to hit them in full force.
It'll be fun. Our number 4 game is the New Orleans Saints versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, why is this one on our list? Well, it's on September 21st, and that is when we will see the premiere of Allegiant Air Stadium and the Las Vegas Raiders. I think it'll be fun to see how that stadium looks, and that's why it's here on our list.
Yeah, and especially if there's nobody in the crowd, so it'll just be fun to actually get a full view of the stadium, and kind of with nobody in it.
I think it will be more interesting seeing that stadium than it will be seeing SoFi Stadium, whatever it is, that's in Inglewood, California.
Yeah. Let's move on to game number 5, which is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Cleveland Browns, taking place on October 18th.
Now, some of you may be wondering, why is this on the For the Fans list for best games to watch? Well, fans, that will be when Myles Garrett faces off against the Pittsburgh Steelers once again. And I think that is going to be a really interesting game to see how that shakes out.
I love how that's the reason.
Look at it this way, man. You got to imagine that Garrett's going to be going in there probably in a really bad mood, and the Steelers are not going to be happy about it at all either. It's going to be a tough game.
But imagine that instead of Mason Rudolph, it's now Big Ben under center.
Oh yeah, and then that is what
that's going to where it's going to get interesting. Yeah, and Duckmaster is saying hopefully Rudolph is sitting on the bench during that game.
Yeah, no kidding. But whether Rudolph is on, can you imagine this? Rudolph is sitting there on the bench, and every time that the Browns score, if they do score, or if they're trying a big defensive stop, Myles Garrett, he's going to be throwing dirty looks at Mason Rudolph.
Oh, no, imagine this. Myles Garrett forces a fumble and recovers it for a touchdown. That's when the big dirty look's going to come in.
Or, on the other side, the Steelers just managed to flatten Myles Garrett the entire time, and there might be a couple of unsportsmanlike conduct flags that could end up getting thrown.
More than a couple. I could see at least 5 being thrown.
There's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of tension that's going to be at that game. Let's just leave it at that. Anyway, our bonus game, the reason that we have this on as a bonus game is because it is the New Orleans Saints versus the Minnesota Vikings. This will be another attempt between these two teams who seem to have no real good feelings towards each other, especially with the Vikings beating the Saints out twice now to advance further in the playoffs. This past season, again, just because the Saints may have been robbed again of their other win. And then also because 2 years before that, there was the Minneapolis Miracle. Here's the fun part of the Saints and Vikings game, though. It's happening Christmas Day, assuming the schedule still is going to be the way it is. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah. Oh, man. When this game happens, if the Saints and the Vikings meet up later on, the Saints better hope the Vikings walked away with the Minneapolis Miracle on the Christmas Day game, rather than that playoff game.
No kidding. All right. Let's quickly go into, Shane, our For the Fun topic, because I've been waiting to do this one for a while. We kind of had to put it on hold, but even though the fact that we started late today, we should really try and get through this.
Oh, yeah.
Our For the Fun topic, let's start this out. It says, NFL approved a 7-game playoff format for the upcoming season, but the 17-game format will not take place until likely the following year. Shane, if the 17-game format did take place this year, what matchup would be the most fun to see for each team? Now, with this, because we've picked some teams to play other teams, it would mean that there would be a couple of games here that didn't really make sense as far as a really creative matchup. Case in point, the Miami Dolphins playing the Detroit Lions. What's so exciting about that? Nothing really. There's nothing much that we want to see there. Or the New York Jets playing the Washington Redskins. What's so interesting about that? That's just kind of how we picked it out. I'm going to name off those ones really quickly so that then we can go into the ones that it's like these are the coveted matchups that we would love to see in a Week 17 setting if we had 17 games. So I already mentioned the Jets versus the Redskins, not exciting. Dolphins versus Lions, not exciting. Ravens versus Falcons, actually, not one that we're like, oh, that would be really cool to see. We have the Steelers versus the 49ers. It's going to be interesting, but not one that it's like, oh, there's a big reason that we would like to see that. A couple other ones: Browns versus Cardinals, Bengals versus Bengals versus the Raiders. Let's see, what other ones do I have here? Wow. Okay. The Jaguars versus the New York Giants. Again, not something that's like, oh, that's going to be really interesting for a certain reason. Let's see. What else do I got? Wow, I should have organized this a lot better. For the most part, that's about it. I think the next few games that we would say are going to be really, really fun to watch if they were to happen this season. This is why. So these most coveted matchups we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 games that were like, this is going to be really fun to see for one reason or another. So the first of which I kind of want to get out of the way first because, again, it kind of is like a Ravens and Falcons game or a Steelers and 49ers game, is the Cowboys versus the Panthers. I think that would be an exciting matchup that we're not going to see this year, but could see next year. It'll be cool to see basically Ezekiel Elliott versus Christian McCaffrey, that sort of thing of seeing who's the better running back between the two when they play in each case of their possessions. Does that make sense, Shane?
Oh, yeah. My money's on Christian McCaffrey all of the way.
Yeah, I mean, why would it be on the Dallas Cowboys? Let's be honest with you.
Oh, taking the cheap shot. I like it.
Yep. Shane, how about you take another one and explain why do you think that would be so exciting?
See, I want to take the most exciting one, but I don't want to take that right away. I want to save that like towards the end.
Okay. Pick another one.
I think the one I'm going to have to go with is probably the Chiefs versus the Titans. Mainly because that would be an AFC Championship rematch, and that game got pretty close, and the Chiefs almost didn't make it to the Super Bowl, but they were able to come back and kind of decimate the Titans towards the end.
I think that one would be really cool to see. Definitely. Another one that kind of more lies on it could be exciting, but not all that much, is the Houston Texans versus the Denver Broncos. Now, the reason that this one is in here is because the last time that these two teams met, the Broncos slaughtered the Texans. And this was last season when Drew Lock all of a sudden came out there guns a-blazing, and Deshaun Watson and Bill O'Brien and all the rest of the Texans looked like fools. It would be interesting to see that sort of scenario happen again.
I agree. Some interesting games. My next pick of game would be the Chargers versus the Colts, for the main reason it's going to be Phillip Rivers' old team facing off against him with his new team. And I think those matchups are always the interesting ones to watch.
That would be fun to see. We're not going to see that this year, but that would be really cool to see if, Phillip Rivers went up against his old team. His only other team that he's ever been with. I think that one would be fun to watch.
his only team, which, ooh man, that would be good.
This one, I'll make it because it involves my own team. I think the Chicago Bears versus the Philadelphia Eagles would be a very exciting matchup because Philadelphia was where Nick Foles won a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP. And if he was still playing with the Bears, or like he is now, if this game were hypothetically supposed to we're supposed to happen this season, that would be a fun matchup.
Yeah, definitely. It's very interesting because do you think if this were to happen, do you think the Eagles fan would be in the stands also somewhat rooting for the Bears?
Oh, no way.
I don't know, because when he first came to Jacksonville's Twitter halfway blew up with nothing but Eagles fans like, you guys better treat Nick well, like we love Nick so much, he gave us our only Super Bowl, like we love him, we will root for you guys even if you guys are playing us, and I'm like, whew.
Yeah, I guess the reason that I don't want to say that is just because I know Philly fans can get nasty. I think if it were to take place in Lincoln Financial Field, yeah, there'd be a lot of good feelings towards Nick Foles. I think if it was any Eagles fans that were in Soldier Field, maybe not, but we'll have to see.
All right, time to pick another one. I think I'm going to go with the Seahawks versus the Packers. Mainly because I just want to see these two powerhouses duke it out. That's my personal reason for it.
I also have that down just because we still need to... There was still that really questionable call about whether that was a first down or not in the divisional round last year. And I think there might be a little bit of animosity between Seahawks fans and Packers fans because of that.
Basically, we're just wanting to put two teams in a stadium and have them fight to the death.
And then after that, this is another one that I think is going to be really cool. Let's put the Rams versus Saints. Now, why this game? Because, well, that we had that questionable pass interference call that happened in the NFC Championship 2 seasons ago. Now, granted, the Saints and the Rams have played each other since then, but it was pretty much not much of a contest because that's when Drew Brees injured himself. I would like to see these two teams at full strength play each other again and see who comes out on top. Not to mention, I think it would be good to see that game played in the Superdome.
Interesting. Let's see. We only have 2 left, right?
Yep. And I know which one you want to take, so you want me to take the next one?
Take the next one.
Next one that we have is the Buffalo Bills versus the Minnesota Vikings. Now, why this game? Well, Stephon Diggs plays for the Buffalo Bills now and not the Minnesota Vikings. I would love to see how things go with him playing against his old team, especially since it seems like he's not in real good friendship situation with Kirk Cousins anymore. I think it'd be interesting to see just how those two games, or how that game would go between those two teams.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting because I think they ended on very bad terms. It was like a very, very bad breakup.
Yep. But all of this pales in comparison to our final matchup, which is our most coveted matchup of all, which we are really sad is not happening this year.
Which Duckmaster did chime in when I posted the For the Fun, and I told him that was a spoiler because he gets it right, but it's the Patriots versus the Buccaneers. The Patriots dynasty without Tom Brady versus Tom Brady and Gronk, a lot of what helped build the really, really strong Patriots dynasty on the Buccaneers going head-to-head with each other.
Not to mention with Bill Belichick still as the coach at the Patriots. I think one would be really cool.
I think it would be probably one of the best, like, even if it was kind of like a crappy scoring game, I think just the fire that would happen in this stadium during this game would be amazing just to feel. Like, I feel like this game isn't even so much about the fans or about the game, but more so about the fans and are they going to root for Brady or are they going to root for Belichick? What part of the marriage are the kids going to?
Definitely. So let's just wrap this up, Shane, really quickly, just as, just kind of seeing what we would think about this. For the Patriots and Buccaneers game, if it were played in Gillette Stadium, who would win?
I would say the Patriots.
Yeah, I'll agree on that. What if they're playing it if the Buccaneers were at home?
Definitely the Buccaneers.
I think they might have home home field advantage there too.
My main thing is with the Patriots, if they were playing in Gillette, is going to be, are they going to support Tom or are they going to support Belichick?
Right. I'm more just asking you like what the outcome of the game is going to be. So in this case, for this next one, Bills versus Vikings, if this were played in US Bank Stadium and the Vikings had home field advantage, would they win or would the Bills win?
I would say the Vikings win.
Okay, I'm going to just say the Bills win.
Okay.
I think, if they were happening this season, I'd go for the Bills. Now, if the Bills were at home, who would win?
I would still say the Vikings.
Really? And I would still say the Bills.
Huh. Interesting.
How about Chiefs versus Titans? If this was played at Arrowhead.
Oh, I'm going to pit Chiefs both ways.
I would too. Let's just say it.
I was like, I don't think the Titans. I think the Titans are good, but I don't think they're good enough to stop the defending Super Bowl champs.
Yeah. Okay, and then Chargers versus Colts. SoFi Stadium or Lucas Oil? Who would win?
I'm swinging Colts both ways.
No, I am too. I'm gonna be honest.
Because here's my reason why for this one. In LA, even if the Chargers have the home field advantage, they still don't have home field advantage.
Yeah, it's true.
That's the whole reason I'm saying this.
Yeah. Okay, how about Bears versus Eagles? Lincoln Financial and Soldier Field.
I'm going Bears.
I'm going to say the Eagles win if it's in Lincoln Financial and Philly. But if it is in Chicago, then the Bears.
I'm saying Bears both ways.
Right.
I feel like the Bears will just pound the Eagles down.
Right. How about, now this is going to be a fun one. If it's in CenturyLink, it is between the Seahawks and the Packers. If it's in CenturyLink Field, I think it's going to be the Seahawks. But if it's in Lambeau, especially during the winter, I think it's going to be the Packers.
Yeah, the Packers are almost unstoppable in Lambeau in the winter, and even in Lambeau in general. I'm going to say same thing you said. Yep. Especially because with those two teams, I feel like their home field advantage is literally bigger than almost every other team in the NFL.
I would agree with that. I feel like the Patriots also carry a lot of momentum with them when they're in Gillette. But yeah,
they do. But I think it pales compared to Packers in the winter, and then in Lambeau, and then Seahawks with their Legion of Boom behind them, just exploding everybody's ears with the volume.
Yeah, it's true. However, also I feel like the Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium, that's a good one too. I mean, Come on, how can you not feel a little bit of dread as the away team when all you can hear is
See, I thought you were going to say the Broncos in the Mile High Stadium, where it used to be like the Chargers would fly out like a week early or as early as they can just to get oxygenated up there and get accustomed to the high.
That's true.
Yeah. Anyways, let's move on to Rams versus Saints. My goodness. I looked at this one and instantly thought of a bloodbath.
I would too, but I'm still going with Saints, whether it's in SoFi Stadium or in the Superdome.
I'll agree.
And then Texans versus Broncos. If it's in, I think it's called Energy Field. Is that what?
For Colt or what was it?
For the Texans. I know the Broncos play in Mile High, but
let me double check because I'm drawing blank. NRG. Formerly Reliant Stadium, so
that's Houston. Yeah, I was like, I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah. Their name changed to NRG.
That's right.
Like energy. Okay, energy. Got it. Energy Stadium now.
With that one, I'm thinking if it's at NRG, then it's probably the Texans. If it's at Mile High, it's the Broncos.
I'm gonna say the Texans are gonna take it both times.
Okay, cool.
I feel like Deshaun is just going to be a little too versatile for them.
Yeah, well, that wasn't how it was last year, though.
Yeah, I know. I feel like he wants revenge. He can taste it now.
And then wrapping it up, Cowboys versus Panthers. If they're in Bank of America Stadium, or are they in AT&T Stadium, who's going to win?
Cowboys.
Both times, I would agree.
I hate to say it. It still feels dirty. I need to wash my mouth out like 20 times after how much good I talked about the Cowboys this episode.
No kidding. I feel ya. And with that wraps up our For the Fun and our episode.
yeah, sorry once again that this episode started very, very late. Had no idea what was going on. Still have no idea what's going on. I'm gonna try to figure out how to fix it, but I don't know if whatever happened is going to fit, so we might just do a quick audio check before now, just to make sure. But we're happy that you guys joined us and even stayed up with us this late to go through the entire schedule, go through the For the Fun, kind of break down a lot of what we expect to see this season in the NFL.
Absolutely, and let's just see, let's have our fingers crossed that we will soon see the end of COVID-19 and these restrictions enough to get, everything underway. Football being normal again, fans in the stadium. Let's just hope that it happens. It might not, but let's hope, because let's have this as normal as possible.
Let's just have life go back to normal. Everybody enjoying football and baseball, basketball, every sport in the world needs their time to shine, and it's really depressing that a lot of the young college players, especially for basketball, have their seasons cut short because of the virus.
Definitely, and that's just the way that life is. But washing, during your stay home. If you're feeling sick, don't go out. Wear a mask. Wash your hands, and most of all, just be kind to people. If someone disagrees with you, so be it. Pretend that they're a Cowboys fan and they don't know anything.
I think that's the best way to send off. I have nothing further to say, so good night, everybody. Have a good one.
Take care. Good night.